Mayor Dillon, the governor rejected Medicaid expansion and an estimated 800,000 Floridians were left without medical coverage. What is your position on the expansion of Medicaid benefits to needy Floridians?
Well, let's be very clear. I'm in favor of expanding Medicaid to what are nearly 1 million of the most medically needy people in our state. And let me tell you what that would have equaled in money. Just a year ago, had we expanded Medicaid, the state of Florida would have pulled down $6 billion additional dollars into the state system to pay nurses, to expand Medicaid, to ensure that healthcare was accessible for more people. And I don't know where politicians get off, where we make a decision not to make sure that people could get access to life-saving medicine. We would rather see them in emergency rooms where the care is less efficient and more expensive than having them have access to care where they could go and see a doctor on a regular basis, maybe avoid those emergency room visits. And I want to make it very clear, Medicaid recipients are working people. They would have us believe otherwise, but they are working people. And they're terrified of getting sick. Why? Because if they get sick, they can't go to work. And if they can't go to work, they can't earn a wage. And if they cannot earn a wage, then they cannot take care of themselves and their families. Right? So this is real. This is not just about expanding Medicaid by way of some kind of throwaway line. This is how do we make sure that people get access to life-saving medicine, that they can go to work and take care of themselves and their families. We've got to be as committed to this as we ever have been committed to anything. And I'm proud so far to be the only Democrat in this race who has said that we will expand Medicare for all. Because we can't just say healthcare is a right without making sure that it's backed up by the public policy solutions that ensure that healthcare is a human right. The dignity around health, which allows you the dignity around work and the dignity around retirement, where you can retire with your full self intact. And that shouldn't be too much to ask in the 21st century.
Thank you. United States representatives from Florida sent a letter to the president opposing fracking and offshore drilling in Florida. Our representative, Dan Webster, who currently was one of those 10. In fact, he has supported legislation to support offshore fracking and drilling in Florida. As governor, what would you do to oppose and work against this in Florida?
So growing up in Florida, I love, my wife and I often have debates on what's nicer, the East Coast or the West Coast. Because the beaches of this state, the natural beauty, that's what brings folks to Florida. If many of you are from Massachusetts or New Jersey or from the Midwest or from wherever, you came here likely for the beauty of this state and the sunshine that's just out the window. And so certainly I would oppose any efforts towards fracking that would hurt our water supply or offshore drilling. In fact, just today, if you're familiar, just today there will be tens of thousands of people all across the state of Florida locked in arms, marking the anniversary of the BP oil spill in the Gulf that was not too long ago, reminding Floridians and reminding the nation of the dangers posed when we allow big rigs to be just off our shores. You know, I see the governor of Florida as an advocate, as a champion, as somebody who can help the voters of the state to understand the importance and the challenge of protecting these resources. Because what we know, whether we're talking about for-profit charters or whether we're talking about oil rigs or fracking, is that we need someone who's willing to stand up to the financial interests that are short-term so that we can protect the future and sustainability of the long-term for my children, your grandchildren, all across the state of Florida. That's the type of governor I would be when it comes to our environment.
Thank you. Mayor Levine, there has been extensive attempted mediation between Georgia and Florida over the water flow in the Apalachicola River that flows from Georgia into Florida down to the Gulf of Mexico. Georgia has restricted this flow and it has had serious consequences with our fishing industry, threatening to put the oyster fishermen out of business. How would you address this issue as a governor?
Okay, once again, I think we're all pretty much in agreement here. We need water for us to survive as a state as we are. This is a crisis situation, but I guess a little bit different. As being an entrepreneur, the one thing I learned is that litigation is never a good thing, okay? A lot of times the only people that actually win are the lawyers, and I think we'd all agree with that. So I can tell you, if I had been governor over the last 8 years, what I would have most likely done is I would have worked with our neighbor to the north, and I would have figured out some type of great settlement as opposed to spending tens of millions of dollars on legal fees, okay? Because we spend all this money on legal fees and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. And I know one thing, that as we said, the only one that always wins in those situations are lawyers. So to build a 21st century economy, we know this. We need a great environment. We need great health care for everybody. We need to have the best education. We need to make sure we have equal pay for equal work. We need to make sure we have the best non-discrimination laws. We know we need great public transportation. But the one thing I can tell you, everyone in Florida agrees, is we need clean water. And the question, of course, is this, is how do we get there? Well, I know with our neighbor to the north, making sure that we get the proper water, I'm not so sure that you continue with litigation at this point. Sometimes they say that a bad settlement is better than a good lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Gillum, as Democratic governor, how will you work with the legislature that could possibly again be controlled by Republicans?
Yeah, and it is my hope that this blue wave is a blue tsunami, even here in the state of Florida when it comes to the House and to the Senate. But assuming we've got to deal with the Republican leadership, we've got to obviously cooperate where there is room for cooperation. Jose Oliva would be the Republican speaker should Republicans maintain control. And I just finished up a 2-year-long fellowship together as part of the only 2 Floridians as part of this national fellowship known as the Rodell Fellowship at the Aspen Institute. I got to know him a little bit better and he got to know me a little bit better in our respective political philosophies. And obviously, on areas where we can move Republicans to move with us, we're willing to go there. But what I'm not willing to do is to lose on the issues that matter most to us. When it comes to expanding Medicaid, we got to do that. And if we can't get it done there, then we need to take it to the people on the ballot, just as we took medical marijuana to the people on the ballot, and overwhelmingly it was passed. When it comes to making sure that public money for public education gets to public schools, we got to do that. When it comes to believing in science, by God, and understanding the existential threat that sea level rise creates for the state of Florida and tens of millions of people, we've got to compel action there. And if we cannot make it happen at the legislative level, we've got to take it to the people on the Florida ballot. All right? And so when we can work together, let's do that. But what I'm not in favor of is losing ground on the important issues that matter to Floridians and to the future of this state because we want to strike a compromise with Republicans. Where we don't win, and it is of critical importance to win, we've got to have the willingness, the fortitude, the nerve, the sinew, the courage to get out there and take this battle to the people where I believe there are more of us than there are of them. And we will win those battles on the ballot if we can't win them at the legislative process.
Thank you. Mr. King, what is your position on increasing our reliance on solar energy? Opponents like the power companies, as we've said before, argue that installation costs are high and solar energy benefits only benefit the rich. The proponents argue that there are rebates to defray the installation costs and long-term energy savings justify the installation expenses.
So I went to college in Massachusetts, and anyone from Massachusetts, it gets dark often right at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And Massachusetts has more solar jobs than the state of Florida. It makes no sense. That's the challenge we're in. Where I see this, I did a speech in Brevard County a couple of nights ago, and I talked about John Kennedy. And I talked about the early 60s, and I talked about his dream to build an industry around a big idea. What was the idea? We're going to send a man to the moon by the end of the decade. Everybody thought that was crazy at the time, didn't know how we were going to do it. But some of the best minds Some of the best companies in the world came to Florida to figure out how to achieve that dream. You know, when we look at sea level rise and we look at climate change, you know, where others see a massive problem, I see an incredible opportunity, not just for our planet and our state, but for our economy. Imagine if we had a governor that was recruiting, incentivizing, attracting, growing the types of companies and organizations that were committed to start here in Florida or come to Florida to protect this peninsula, to create the products and the services and the solar energy like they have in Massachusetts, to really make this state grow. You know, that's the challenge of a Democratic governor, to show how we rebuild a different economy that works for more people and pays better wages. This is the type of idea that can do it.
Thank you. The Florida public schools, and we've spoken to this a little bit, have suffered because of the love the Republican legislature has for charter schools and their financial contribution to Republican office holders. Yet, results show that charter schools' results mimic or sometimes are below public schools. However, charter schools are not responsible to the local school boards that exist at the pleasure of the legislature. Will you pledge to support our public school system if you're this already?
Thank you, and I think I addressed the question. I think we all pretty much agree that we don't want to invest in someone else's business going forward. But I'm a public school graduate. I went to public school my entire life. And when I was in high school, I had one of the greatest teachers by the name of John Wilson, who taught me about American history and really, truly spurred my love for politics and engagement and activism. He made us get a subscription to this magazine called Time Magazine, and he made us all read it. And from that time, I developed tremendous love. So I understand the importance, and we understand the importance of education in 21st century economy. But I think it goes back to a bigger issue, and it goes back to an issue of politics, folks. I think it's important that as we go forward in this elections, and whatever it is, with governors and representatives and senators, I think we need to start making sure that we ask people what they've done as opposed to what they plan to do. Because I think it's important that we make sure that we hold people accountable. I know in my life I started from nothing, and I thank God became a success in the private sector. I know that I raised the minimum living wage in Miami Beach, and I'm the only mayor to have actually done it in the state of Florida, and we're being sued by everybody. I know I fought back for sea level rise and climate change. I know that we have the highest LGBTQ scores in the history of the state of Florida. I know that we reformed the police department. I know we built green bike paths. I know it, and I think it's important for us because I think it's crucial that we make sure that whoever is elected governor doesn't just say things, has a track record of actually getting things done. Because that's what we truly want to see, whether it's taking money out of charter schools or paying teachers a nationally competitive salary. That's what we need to go Florida forward. Thank you.
Thank you.